back to another episode of the Ada County Sheriff Podcast. Joining me again today is my producer and constituent, Matt Todd. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, sir.
Yeah. So we were just discussing our survey that we put out to the public a number of months ago. We had a couple thousand responses, and we were kind of talking about some of the opposition / I'm unsure about this bond.
Right. No, this kills me because the opposition that I've heard from people, and even that I've had in past years with bonds like this, has very little to do with the functionality of the jail system. It's primarily the two camps that I've heard people fall into, and I've been part of, are, okay, you're locking up too many people for, like stealing out of the till at a store, or like having a tiny bit of marijuana, or you're treating people way too well in the jail. Like they need to be wearing like pink underwear and sleeping on concrete with bread. Yeah. So it seems like this area is very similar. Those are the kind of the two camps that people fall into. Am I correct?
That's correct. I usually classify them as the don't put anybody in jail camp and the bread and water sleep on the floor camp. That's the simplest way I can put it. Both of which are not what's happening here in our county today. We can start with the don't put any people in jail camp. The survey really showed us why people would be against the bond. And the biggest one that comes up is stop housing low-level offenders, and they really gravitate towards marijuana possession, which is a misdemeanor. So they always say, you're locking up too many people for marijuana, too many people for marijuana. Put that in perspective. I think it was earlier this year, the Statesman asked us point blank, how many people do you have sitting in your jail on a standalone misdemeanor paraphernalia or marijuana? And the answer was 0.
Wait. So there literally are 0 people at the time this article came out that were being housed for like marijuana offense.
Correct. So our jail population has evolved over the years with our population growth. So when I started decades ago in there, it was kind of this mix of people, could be DUI, maybe a misdemeanor drug paraphernalia, or somebody that are kind of sitting in jail awaiting their time. Well, the administration at the time at the sheriff's office started some pretty innovative programs to say, hey, instead of building a new jail because of population growth or expanding the jail, which we still are forced to do because of population growth, let's figure out who really belongs here and who really doesn't belong here. So our programs over the years have said these people, we can supervise them outside the jail very easily, and they qualify in this matrix for those programs. These people, they have to stay in here until they're done with court. It has caused the evolution of that has now brought us to today where anywhere from 85 to 88% of our population are in there on felonies. And then you have about 5% that are serving time. So a very small percentage there. So all those people, all those marijuana possessions, you don't see them in there because we have them out on programs where we monitor them until they can get to court.
So it sounds like you guys are essentially using the jail as like a last resort for people. Like when you arrest someone, you're not the first line of defense is not put them in here for a prolonged duration of time. There's nuance when you're figuring out who and why and for how long.
Correct. So, I don't know if last resort is right because you have a murderer comes in.
Sure.
Right. But we want those beds to be available for those people, right? So you get a guy that's in there on DUI. While I despise people that drink and drive, I also don't want him taking up a bed that an armed robber should be taking up. We have a really safe community here, but it's gotten much larger. So those armed robbers and murderers, they exist in our community, and we have them in our jail. So instead of marijuana guy taking up a bed, put him out on this program so that when armed robbery guy comes in, we can house him.
Okay, well, so if you're saying that you don't really have a lot of low-level offenders clogging up the system, which makes sense, what do you say to the people that you're like, all right, great, so Sheriff, you do only house murderers and violent people, right? And that's obviously not the only thing you do, but let's take that cohort.
Okay.
why treat them any better than you absolutely have to keep them alive?
Well, there are a lot of kind of different avenues for that. So, we are responsible, whether people like it or not. The sheriffs in this state are responsible for running a jail statutorily, which makes us responsible for the well-being of every single person that's in there. So when they come into our facility, we automatically have to take care of their every need, clothing, food, medical, you name it. And when we have people that are in there overcrowded, and the type of people that we house now, they have a little shorter fuse for living in conditions that aren't really appropriate. You get a higher instance of violence, inmate on inmate violence, inmate on staff violence. So we see a lot more injuries to staff and inmates. And if you are, again, of maybe the sorts of I don't care about inmates beating up inmates. Okay, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but the taxpayer is going to still pay for that. I'm responsible for it, but the taxpayers are the ones that pay for the medical care, for the broken tooth or the broken nose or whatever. And we certainly don't want our deputies injured, for sure. I know I don't. And we still are going to have to pay for all of that. So, plus, I mean, you have to be humane. I mean, people watch too much TV. You have to be humane to people. This is modern day society. And if you're not, you get sued. So we also want to keep that from happening. And we do a really good job of keeping that from happening, so we don't have to give taxpayer money to people.
Okay, but the concept of like the pink pajamas and whatnot was really popular as it's like the Arizona sheriff or something. I don't know all the details.
Yeah.
How is that guy getting away with? I mean, it almost became like reality television. People are like, yeah, it's like get them, and making them sleep outside in hot summer days, things like that.
Right.
What's wrong with trying to do that here?
Well, this isn't Arizona, first of all.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, there's going to be times they kids can't sleep outside.
Right.
So I think that day in our nation is probably past, where it seems like all the time we become a little more litigious of a society, and so we have to be mindful of risk to the Ada County taxpayer, right? So that's part of our job as government. It should be part of our job as government to manage risk for the funds that taxpayers give us. The managing of risk includes looking out for the welfare of those people that are in our custody. So if society or the judicial system deems that it's not humane to make people sleep out in tents in 100-degree weather or 30-degree weather, then we're going to pay for it.
Okay. What if I get arrested? You show up at my house. I'm like, what are you here for, Sheriff? You're like, I'm actually arresting you for murder in the first degree. And I'm like, oh, I didn't murder anyone. You're like, well, that's not what we think. You take me to jail. I hang out in jail. Now, again, I'm being charged with first degree murder. And we go before I finally get my court date. I go to court. And they're like, okay, we have DNA evidence. And Matt actually didn't do it. Thank God. I'm not a murdering type. So I'm innocent. And let's say you really went the route of sleep on the concrete floor, eat the bread, survive to your court date if you can, but I'm actually innocent. Then an innocent civilian, a citizen, has gone through this process and is far worse off for it. Is that you do house people that are awaiting trial, correct? And these people are innocent until proven guilty.
The majority of the people that we house are awaiting trial, because that's what a jail is. It's almost like a holding facility, right? They've been charged with a crime, but the majority of the people in there haven't been convicted of a crime. So that is what we're looking at. Probably
and again, I'm not trying to say that like the majority of people that come in are innocent, right? I think you guys probably do your job very well and don't charge people unnecessarily. But from a humanitarian and a constitutional standpoint, those people are innocent until proven guilty. Yeah. So the sentiment that it's like, well, you should make their life as horrible as possible. It's like, that could be an innocent man.
So a better way to think about it, because most people, I think a lot of people can't put themselves in that position, right?
Sure.
It's easy for you and I to go, well, boy, I got, maybe what if I accidentally got charged with murder? I think as a human being, that's just like, that's something you maybe think, but you don't put yourself in that position.
Right.
But maybe you have a son or a daughter. Think of it that way, right? Your son or daughter puts themselves in some kind of position. How would you want them to be treated in our facility, right? You want them to be treated humane, respectful, and you'd want them to be safe. Right. Now, when you say, oh, well, when you use your example, like I'm saying, I don't think the public can put themselves in accurately, but you think about, oh man, my son, he's a law-abiding citizen, but what if that happened to him?
Right.
Now it's a little more real to you, I think, that, oh, well, I want him to be treated fairly. Yeah, they don't get to do a lot of things. This is still jail, right? It's not summer camp, but we still want to make sure we treat them with respect and dignity, but hold them accountable.
Right. And to your point, let's say, I mean, look, anybody with somebody with a child that's of driving age knows that kids are going to make really bad decisions. And let's say the worst is to happen and there's a massive car accident and someone dies. It's not impossible to have somebody involved in a fatal car accident charged for manslaughter, even if it's like, involuntary manslaughter. And it could be that they're accused of texting or they were distracted or something. And it's like, listen, you got 18-year-olds driving around that are perhaps not making the best decisions, but perhaps they shouldn't be convicted of manslaughter. That doesn't mean they won't be charged, right? So that 18-year-old who is perhaps driving around, maybe texting, maybe not, whatever happened, in the event that he is accused and then actually acquitted, that's correct, right? Acquitted?
Yep.
When you're innocent?
Yep.
Okay, God bless it.
Good call.
Thanks, I appreciate it. In the event that they're acquitted and they went through some horrific jail experience, again, it doesn't seem right as an American citizen, especially to come out as an innocent person and having gone. I've been listening to a lot of. Rogan has a lot of Innocent Project and people that Amnesty Projects and things of that nature on, and to hear what people have gone through when, like 20 years later, they were in maximum facilities and just the horrible things they went through, and then to find out they were innocent. It's like, dude, you don't want the Ada County jail system to be reproducing those types of things. Correct.
And I think there's something to be said for the fact that we don't have a facility like that. We certainly don't want to turn into that facility where it's, gladiator day in the dorm and things like that. We do a really great job of managing people. We just do. But you can only do so much with the space you have and the infrastructure you have. And so we want to not turn into that. So if we can be as efficient as possible and make sure we have all the infrastructure that supports us housing inmates and treating them appropriately, that's the goal, right? I mean, yeah, bread and water, sleep on the floor, that's the easy button, but not in the long term. In the long term, that means violence, lawsuits, medical bills. I mean, that's just what that means.
And much more likely you're going to have like greater instances of recidivism, right? Like if you have somebody that's innocent and they get abused and horrible, things happen in jail, that person's not going to come out fully functioning like, the same way. And if you have a criminal that is actually guilty, the time spent is not going to prepare them for reintegrating back into society effectively.
Right. I mean, we'd all love to think that, it's like the movies where people, I just sit around, do my time, read a book, and we're all good. But the fact of the matter is, when you have the vast majority of your population are in there for felonies, you house people together that are, for the most part, all felons. And you're right. Some people are innocent, and that's part of our judicial process. And we certainly don't want someone to become a victim of something, even if they're guilty. We don't want to have a victim in the jail, period. Right.
Right. That's not part of the judicial system.
Right.
Where it's like,
right.
You just like you can house, you can take away my rights, you can put me in this place, but part of the deal is not that I get the hell beat out of me every single night or worse or killed.
Right.
Right.
Right. And that really still happens in a lot of jails in America. I mean, I'm not saying that's the norm, but when you have a jail that is overpopulated and poorly run, ours is not poorly run, but if overpopulated and it doesn't have the infrastructure, things happen. And we really want to keep those things from happening.
Gotcha. Okay, so then how much does this actually cost the individuals? And I think you told me the last time we spoke, but again, I would like to know that, people are innocent until proven guilty. And during that duration, they are being held securely. It's not a vacation, but they're not getting killed and abused and whatnot, especially because, again, innocent until proven guilty. But what's the price tag on upgrading so that the jail system in Ada County can really assure that you can't guarantee, but again, can make the required upgrades so that we can, stem the tide for some of those things.
So yeah, that's the $49 million question, right? Is how much? That's
a lot of dollars.
It is a dollar. Like, and how much will that cost me as a taxpayer? And it's a great question. So it should cost about $3.60 per $100,000 of your taxable assessed value of your home. So after homeowner's exemption, let's say a $500,000 home. I don't know how much your homeowner's exemption would be, but average Ada County taxpayer, you're looking at about $15 to $20 a year.
15, 20. And again, I think you told me before that's there's a 20-year bond.
20-year bond. Yep. You can. So there are penalties for paying it off 10 years before 10 years. But after 10 years, if the commissioners chose to do so, they could pay off the bond early too.
Gotcha. So cost me about 15 to 20, or on average about $15 to $20 annually.
Yeah, annually.
That's not bad.
Yeah, well, we're kind of blessed here in Ada County. I mean, we have, even though there are a lot of people, when you're trying to get something like this done, that helps the taxpayer, because if you're in Cassia County and you're running a $49 million bond, it's going to cost you about $1 million a year per person, right? That's the exaggeration. But here we have so many people, it's so spread out throughout every homeowner that, it keeps the cost to $15, $20 a year.
Beautiful.
So we've covered a lot of ground on the surveys today. You have anything else that you want to talk about or ask me about the survey?
No, I think again, most people fall into those two camps, and we covered things even outside of that. So no, It makes perfect sense.
Okay, great. So thanks for joining us again on another episode of the Ada County Sheriff Podcast. Everybody be safe out there.